Welcome to Three Grown Girls, a podcast where we discuss issues that affect women as they navigate the 21st century. This is a space created by Jamaican women to discuss topics of importance to us. We're talking relationships, money, career, and the varied things in between. Through it all, we encourage women to live their best lives. As women in our 40s and with the benefit of hindsight and experience, we nurture this space, a safe space to explore the lived experiences not only of ourselves, but also of others. Our co hosts include yours truly, Petre, the cool, calm, and collected voice of reason, or, so I'm told, the candid and spirited Caroline, who says what others are thinking but won't say, and Sarah, who always holds us down with an analytical and spiritual viewpoint. Thank you for joining. We are happy you are here. Now, don't forget to share this podcast with a friend and stay tuned.
Welcome back to another podcast and another exciting topic. Today, we want to broach the subject of commitment in a relationship. Specifically, we will be dissecting whether or not marriage is a requirement for a committed relationship. Now, a formal definition of marriage is the state of being united as spouses in a consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. This is usually accompanied by a wedding ceremony, depending on where you live and your culture, and festivities such as a marriage reception. Now, we have often heard the phrase, "Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?" This is usually seen as a derogatory comment referring to a woman providing all the benefits in a relationship without being married. Benefits such as, sexual intercourse, cooking, cleaning, and sometimes even bearing children. Beyonce probably said it best when she said, "If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it." La. Suggesting that if a man loves a woman, he will ask her to marry him. Now, these idioms suggest that a relationship is not seen as committed if not followed by marriage. But is this really so? Does marriage automatically mean commitment? Now, decades ago, marriage was an obvious and assumed next step into commitment. Today, people are asking themselves whether marriage is the end all of commitment, or if it's an outdated concept, or whether or not it contributes or guarantees, things like fidelity, financial security, and so forth. So let's get into the discussion, ladies. Let me begin by asking, as little girls, did any of you dream of getting married? Do you see yourself, walking down the aisle wearing your veil and long gown and all of that? What was your take on marriage growing up?
P, you want to go first?
That's an interesting question, Caroline. I think, to be quite honest, as a young girl, and when I say young girl, I mean like little kid, I did not fantasize about marriage. I did not.
That
No,
does not
honestly, I
surprise
didn't.
me.
No, yeah, truly. Even in terms of even when I got to high school, I don't think I had any. No, I didn't have any fantasy about walking down the aisle in some white gowns. I mean, granted, I read a lot of historical romances and so on, and so I guess I was cultured in that way. So I always held the view that I wanted to be married. Right.
Okay.
I grew up in a Christian home. I am, residing in a predominantly Christian culture, and that is one of the things that we emphasize, that people really should be married, and so I believed in it. I wanted to achieve it at some stage, but I didn't indulge in any sort of fantasy or elaborated fantasies about it. No, not at all. And it makes sense because ultimately I got married in jeans and a white shirt.
Yes,
I love that. I
Yes,
need to talk about that, Petre. We need to talk about that off here.
Yes. So my husband and I are sensible people. So we had all of the other elements of it. Your bouquet and the this and the
Yes.
that and the that.
It was
But we
very
kind of
expensive jeans, though, may I add. But
yeah,
anyway,
but you are something else. No, but I think one of the things when you're getting married, and when you're in your relationship, I think what you want is to be your kind of authentic self.
Yes.
And so when you're stepping into this union with somebody, one of the first things in the case of my husband and I, we thought, well, who are we really? Are we like long dressed and holy bow tie kind of people? And we weren't. It didn't resonate with us. And I can tell
Okay.
you, we actually went to the bridal shop and we looked around at the different dresses. I tried on a couple of them,
Yeah.
and it was lovely. And then my
The-
husband and I, we get outside, and I recall we're in an ATM, in fact. I would say, hold on, but we've been talking about marriage, and we had agreed that we were gonna do jeans and sandals. And so we
Okay.
said, all right, let's pursue that, because this is our happy place, our resting place. We're comfortable. We're journalists. We're people on the move.
Yes.
We're very low key. We're not too high maintenance, and the fabric of the jeans, I
Jeans.
think, yeah, embodied all of that, including
Okay.
that marriage can be a little bit of work, and so you have to be prepared to kind of scrub down and do what is necessary.
Which we'll definitely get into. So, Sarah, as a little girl, did you dream about getting married?
I think I did. I can't.
I believe you.
I
Definitely.
can't. I can't quickly think of exactly how I'd pictured it, but I know I was in love with the idea of being in love. I like P. I read a lot of historical romance. In my late teens, early 20s, thereabout, and so I had those fantasies, and I think more so when dating my now husband, that's when I really started to really picture it, even in the very, very early stages
Right.
of having that fantasy and, like the colors that you'd want, but not to a bridezilla extent,
Right.
right? Or really harped up on the day.
Yes.
I really wanted a nice day, but I never fantasized about it to the extent where
Right.
I would have spent any amount of money on it. We both agreed we were not going to be in debt. So I didn't have that fantasy of,
Yes.
I was more in love with the idea of being in the marriage and not so much the wedding day. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yes.
But yeah, I was that stereotypical little girl.
I can see that, Sarah.
Yeah.
For me though, I'm with Petre. I never saw myself getting married. And I think maybe because I was always a rebel compared to my other sisters. And
The
always
middle
trying to go
child
against,
man.
yes,
The
I
penny
always
them you
want to
see?
go against, I always want to go against the grain. If everybody's doing it, I wanted to not do it. So I think, growing up, I never thought about being married and, having a husband and all of that. Of course, I dream about sex, but I never dream about marriage. Seriously, and even when I read those romance novels, it always annoy me that the man has to rescue the woman. I should have still on a wait for him come rescue her and decide to say, yes, me love you.
Yeah, I
And
never liked that. I never liked
those
that.
things,
Yeah.
but those were the romance that we grew up on, right? We were princesses and we had to be
Yeah.
rescued. I mean, just never liked the idea. So, that didn't really play a big part into, growing up. And I think that is why maybe I'm still trying to go against the grain, although it's catching up with me, which we'll
Yeah.
talk about. Having said all of that, do you think that marriage is really a requirement for a committed relationship?
I would hate to say P go first again, but I'm really tempted. But I think you can not be in a marriage and be in a very committed relationship. And I do believe that you can be in a marriage and not committed, right? But I think ideally the marriage is somewhat of a carried over my swirling. I like totally lost my train of thought. Guys, let me just tell you, this podcast is not scripted.
Exactly. We can't script it, and we don't want it
We
scripted.
don't want
No,
it to
we're
be
hustling and
scripted.
flowing. That's what
Yes.
we're
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. The moderator may prepare a little bit, but we don't know
Yes.
what questions we're gonna get. We free flow, and that's how we love it, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, but for me, standing on a Christian paradigm, right? And I know everyone who gets married is not Christian. Everybody's not Christian that listens to this podcast, and we're not trying to alienate nobody, but just to bring my worldview in that. I believe what God wanted was a really coming together. You know, in Genesis, it talk about becoming one flesh.
Right.
And I really think that ideally he would have wanted families to be truly committed. Like when you step into a marriage, however marriage is done in whichever corner of the world you are, is that there's this commitment that you won't willy-nilly jump from relationship to relationship, but you'll be solid in one place. You know what I mean? So I think the idea of marriage was born out of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have a committed relationship outside of marriage. Yeah, that's just my view.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I do agree with Sarah. I absolutely believe that you can have a committed relationship sans marriage. However, I also think that marriage incentivizes in a kind of bizarre way,
Yeah.
or maybe not such a bizarre way, commitment.
Right.
And the basis of this, I think, is this, and we know we don't like to go too much into the sociology,
No
except
man, go on.
Sarah.
One night, man.
But there is a sociology professor, Dr. Michael Johnson, who is credited with looking at this issue of commitment, and he identifies three different types of commitment: personal commitment, moral commitment, and structural commitment. Personal commitment is obviously, how you find yourself thinking about marriage. So you want to be married, you feel, sort of this great desire to be a part of this institution, as it were. Morality is, of course, I ought to be committed. I should be a part of this. Again, like Sarah said, based on our Christian beliefs and so on, it helps to kind of ground us that we really should be in this marriage. And so sometimes when you're tempted to exit stage left, if you are, it is that moral commitment that then kind of reins you in and say, all right, you should be here, so let's see how we can work this out. And then finally, there's this business, and I think in particular when it comes to this part, is where this kind of commitment is incentivized, the structural commitment, which is this idea that I have to. And why do you have to? Because you have kids, because you have costs. And of course, we know that divorce is not the cheapest thing. And because staying together, as it says, may not only be troubling, breaking up may be troubling to other people who you love and who you care about. And so this sense of responsibility that you feel to those stakeholders who may be your extended family and so on is what kind of bounds and compels you to remain. On the contrary, where sometimes people are not married, you find then that they don't have the same kind of strictures in the strictest sense. So you may have the personal commitment, but the moral commitment in terms of maybe, like I said, a Christian premise for staying together and so on, as well as the structural commitment, sort of working through how to divvy up resources once you get divorced and so on, I think is not as constraining on persons who are not married. And so, yes, that is my thought, that marriage, it is not necessary for commitment, but it incentivizes it, or it can.
Yeah, I could have put it.
That's a very good perspective.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah,
But I would dare to go as far as to say that marriage to me is a social construct. And society tells us we should want it because it validates our relationship. No, I've been to many weddings. I've been maid of honor, I've been bridesmaids many times. And I respect people who decide to get married. But I do not think that marriage and commitment is one and the same thing. And I think that is where we get our morality, our religion, and everything mixed up. I think, right? And just to put it out there, I'm not married. but I'm in a loving, committed relationship based on my needs. So,
Yeah.
me are married, and me don't know when me I got married, Sarah.
Hoping
So I don't see them as one and the same thing, but I do get what you're saying, Petrie, about the interconnection, that the commitment and so forth. And we can all agree that marriage does not, in and of itself, guarantee any form of commitment, right? Because especially when you're married to a Jamaican man.
exactly.
And we're all aware of the statistics about infidelity in marriages and divorce. So for me, walking down the aisle and signing a document do not in any shape or form guarantee a real commitment. That comes from, that need to be with that person and making that commitment. And I know that some people decide to do it, in a formal way. But for me, I don't know.
Yeah, but I fully agree with you, Caroline. In terms of people have different motives for getting married, right? And for a lot of people, it's the validation that they seek, and they just want to feel nice to show the ring to them friend, right? And some of them, it's not working, but it's who you have, and you really want to be married. No.
Yes.
For me, I don't think I ever felt any societal pressure.
Really?
For me, it was more wanting to honor God.
Okay.
I wanted to honor God with my body. I was sold. All right, even though I dreamt about getting married for a while, not that I wasn't considering marriage, but for a while I was wondering, why am I just up in a white dress walking down the aisle to a man? Your father give you away, so I go from one ownership to the other. So my father.
Yes.
But that did kind of bother me for a while, right? But then, I got over it, and I was sold on what I believe that God intended for the ideal marriage, right? Or the ideal family. And for me, it was more about not just honoring God, but in Christianity we operate not just what we see in the natural, but what's happening supernaturally, what's happening in the spirit. And I believe that for me, a marriage ceremony is really and truly just inviting God's presence as the cord that is now. So when me and my husband go to the altar, any two people go to the altar, they're already committed. Hence why you reach to the altar, right? And then for me is like God coming in as that presence to now solidify this union and tie up this union.
Yes. So right? Sarah, we'll get more into the religious part. I want you to hold on to your thought on that. I want to shift gear a little because you guys know that this always hurt me when people do it. We always assume, right, that it is the man who has the power or who do not want to marry a woman, right? But I dare say that there are women out there who are genuinely not interested in being married. And I'm not sure, what you think about that. Is it that it is always the man who has to decide, okay, I'm ready to marry her? What if she's not ready to marry him? What do you guys think about that perspective?
What do I think? I agree with.
Right?
No.
The woman who wants to get married. Nobody ever look at the perspective that maybe it is the woman who don't want to get married. And we've seen it all the time. The people will say, "Look how long him there with her and him not married to her." Like the power is all his.
Yes.
Him get so much picnic and him not married to her. Like, really? Suppose the woman don't want married to him.
No, I think you're onto something quite interesting there, Caroline. And you can see that both Sarah and I are kind of, gathering ourselves to respond appropriately. No, so on the face of it, I do agree with you. I don't think that every woman wants to get married. However,
you know any?
Caroline.
Checking.
No, and that's the thing. That's the thing. So there are two things I want to raise. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I don't believe that every woman wants to get married. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that a part of why I think it comes across, and in fact, it may be in a lot of different spaces. And I'm talking, so if we think about Caribbean culture, the situation might be different across the different islands, but it is not unique to us. I think just generally speaking, women are cultured to be a certain way and to value themselves on the basis of whether or not they're going to get the offer of a ring.
Yes.
So much so that even when a woman, when she really kind of, in her quiet moment, come to the place where she says, I really don't want to be tied to a man, she kind of buries that aspect of it, because the cultural weight of society that says you are valuable if you get married. So that even though she may not actually want to get married, I think women very often maybe even give the impression that they do, when in point of fact they really don't. Or they may try it, so they get married, and then they realize that, but hold on now, I actually don't want to be doing this, right? But again, the society and its many pressures about what it means to be female and feminine, and a man must take care of a woman, and and all of that, I think, complicates it a little bit for women. So that I think we have that challenge of not being kind of honest with ourselves about whether, in fact, we want to be married.
Yeah, but I agree with you both that, there are women who don't want to get married. I think the average woman, at least in the Caribbean context, wants to. I have no data to support that, just lived experiences, right? But I do believe that there's some women who don't want to for various reasons, right?
Go ahead, Peter.
Sorry, yes, I think I wanted, this is kind of my own question I'm going to put in.
Yeah.
This, I think the question should be too, since you raised the issue of kind of, women are getting older. The question is, why do women want to get married? And I think a part of it is, in sort of my own response to the question I'm asking, is a sense of security and, stability. So if you're getting old, and again, I think some of this is there are some cultural constraints here. So you're getting older as a woman, you may not have children. I know in the Caribbean, we say, our children are with pension.
Yes.
And so even if you don't have a husband, but you have a child, the belief is that as you age, your child or children will, support you. Maybe not financially, but certainly from a social, place, providing, love and support and so on. And where you may be childless, then I think it becomes the value proposition of being married is that you'll have a husband and maybe his, extended family and so on to support you as you age. And so I think a part of the discussion or contemplation of this issue has to be, well, why does anybody want to get married? Is it the business of love? Is it the business of, and I think at different stages of your life, there are different things that motivate you to want to stay, to kind of get married if you haven't been married before.
Right. Peter might not have known this, but I was engaged before. Let's put it out there, right?
Okay, yes.
Party and everything, and said yes to the ring and all of that. But I just never got around to planning the wedding. And I don't know if it's because I was young or it's because I wasn't sure, but it just never happened. And I never feel bad. I never feel bad about it because I didn't want it. Right?
I think that's it.
Everybody was like, because, normally if you engage, as soon as you engage, you start planning this big grand, whatever you envision your wedding to be. And I just never got around to it. So much so that the man took back in ring.
He wasn't supposed to be the person. The person you're with now was supposed to be the person.
Exactly. And that is important too. He wasn't my person. Taking it back to, society and what is expected of us. I really don't like the idea that a woman's worth or social status is linked to being Mrs. So-and-so. And in Jamaica it is. When you say, oh, I'm Mrs. whatever, people look at it different. right? Than if you say you're living with somebody or something. People give you that automatic respect because you're married. And I've always had a problem with it because why is it that the man have to choose we?
But
Why we can't choose them, or why we can decide not to choose them? You know, it's very derogatory when I hear people say, she just in baby mother. You know,
yeah,
so they don't respect the union. And I think that is probably the thing that I hold on to the most, and I shouldn't, because people are looking at it and say, these people are building a life together. You know, they have kids together, they are pooling their resources, they're living. But because you haven't walked down the aisle yet, automatically it's not respected, or it's not valued. And I think that is where, you know, I have a problem. And pitying women, like, Lord God, you can't marry to her. What's wrong with you people?
Yes.
all of what you said is true. All of what you said is true. But there are people who genuinely want married and love the idea of being married, not because of that whole status beating each other. But what I would not want, we've talked about this, is that you protesting about this.
I think so.
You should not shoot yourself in the foot, because you're in a committed relationship. P, when you meet them together, you will see. I love them together. He's like,
I get that very distinct sense. Even the way
Yes.
Caroline spoke
Yes.
about her spouse
Yes.
a while ago. Yeah.
he's the selfish to our Aki, right?
No better blend.
And I'm saying that genuinely, Caroline.
Yes.
So that I really love them together, but let it not be that you guys could have a really nice wedding and a really nice married life where you're Mrs. him and he's Mr. you. And because you feel like people would have expected them for married long time and live together and buy a house together and all of this, wow, not married yet, then because you want to show them, say you're not going to do what they say.
I think that's a big part of it, Sarah. And I think because I'm happy, and it just, I don't think my happiness I'm going to be any happier being married, to be honest. But it's something that I'm thinking about from a personal perspective, that, you know, maybe we should just get married and get it over with, kind of thing. But I agree with you. So
stop protesting.
Taking it back to the whole religious belief and all of that, and, you know, the idea of living in sin. You know, what do you guys think about that viewpoint?
There's religion and there's religion, right? And I am fully 100% sold on marriage commitment as how God intended it, right? Because think about it. When you have situations where there's, all right, we know that marriage don't equal commitment, right? So don't jump down on me, Caroline.
Right.
But where people are in less committed relationships and you have one family this and one family this and all of the dynamics pitting over this and pitting over this. So ideally, if two people come together and you're committed together and you form one family, right? It creates less societal issues, right? But the problem with that is some churches tend to force young people to get married early. People them not in love, them not committed to each other, but then see them start courting, and because they don't want them to fornicate and rush them to get married, and a lot of these people end up in loveless marriages, painful situations, which then the same church are gonna tell them, say you cannot divorce.
Exactly.
Right? So as for my own personal journey, I was struggling and I really wanted to honor God, because my relationship with him was important, right? And so as a Christian, I believe that, okay, I shouldn't be having sex out of marriage. And it was, all right, I'm going to provide a little context.
Yes.
So we would have been dating for like 5 years. During that time, I was not a Christian. I got saved early, but I backslid. Along the way, in my early 20s, I would have recommitted. During that time, my husband would have given his life to the Lord. Independently, we're having our own independent journey with God, right? And so here we are, both committed to Christ but struggling to stop having sex. And we tried for a year. We really did. And it was very hard because we would have had guilt-free sex for 5 years, because we would have started off very young. We were in college when we met. We were like 20 years old, right? Um, so at the 6th year mark, so we are in a committed relationship. We both were we love each other. So it's not like we got married because of the sex, right? Because we're already in love, already in a committed relationship. But it was really important for me in my walk with Christ to honor him. You understand? And so there is an element where if you stand on a Christian paradigm, that is, don't go gallivanting and fornicating, right? But it shouldn't be that you force them to get married or because the girl get pregnant. No, not because the girl get pregnant. They don't need to marry.
Yeah.
The seriousness of those vows and how hard it is to uncouple if it not work out. Do not force the young people them to get married. Sex is not the worst thing they can do. You understand? That part of it I don't like, but I am sold on why this is a precept in Christianity in terms of being married.
So I'm not a Christian, so I don't have the same perspective as you. And thinking about it, I agree with you that from a religious perspective, it's a thing to do. But based on what the Bible says about marriage, why it is such a coveted and something that people are running down? Is it something what? Do you have to legally be married for it to be sanctified under God?
For me, it's not about the paper, when you think, and many Christians will tell you this, if things are rough in their marriage and they think about leaving, right? They don't think about the paper so much. It's the vow, the commitment that you made to God that you're gonna honor this person, right? But Caroline, for me to explain the part where you asked, it'll be a whole biblical study. But in summary, in summary, is basically throughout scripture, you see whether it was polygamous or what we have now, about the importance of family and this man being committed to this one wife, or if him have 3 wives and committed to the 3 wife. In terms of, all right, you have to always remember, with Christianity, it's not just about what you see in the natural, but spiritually, the sanctification that you're going through to be more like Christ, and what does that mean? And sexual immorality, I don't know if because of your body you're using, is one of those things that throughout scripture that God would have breathed into his word that it's about, wait, that's a P, purity. How you that term it, P?
I think what you're saying there about the I was going to use a word like sanctification, but no, maybe that's not the best word.
Yeah,
the best word. But yeah,
Caroline, me that get proper scripture for you, Caroline. If you need to tell me, so we'll go
get into this
biblical. But suffice it to say, the scripture kind of gives a notion that when you have sex with somebody, you really become one flesh, and like you create a soul tie, right? And that each person you have sex with, you create a soul tie with that person. So it's important to just have one person and you become that one flesh. You understand? Fornication and adultery is something that is constantly repeated in the Bible as something that God considers immoral.
You know what, Sarah? I know you always talk about what the eye can't see and all of that. And I know that is coming from, your belief and your experiences with God and all of that. And, but society tells us that we should separate the state from the church, right? So because you're a Christian don't necessarily mean that it has to be the same thing that comes into law in society and all of that. They're 2 different things. So part of it is we have been conditioned to believe that marriage is the only way to be committed, and that is based on our religious beliefs. So, what a big deal?
Can I? No, let me. I think a part of the. I'm gonna take it from a slightly different angle. So the church and the church values family and everything that means.
Yes.
No, I don't think that, like we started out the conversation saying that commitment, marriage is not necessary for commitment, and
Yeah.
that is true.
Mm-hmm.
However, the truth is that culturally there are certain things that are associated with somebody taking the vow. And then it's almost like when you get baptized,
Yeah.
there is
Mm-hmm.
an expectation that comes with signing the papers and saying I'm Mrs. So and so and he's Mr. So and so, and I belong to him and he belongs to me. And having that expectation then supports, at least on the face of it, the stability that we would want to come
Okay.
from it.
I get
And
that.
so I think this is why very often there's a kind of emphasis on the marriage. So it's not that there is no acknowledgement that commitment cannot come out of
Right.
what we call marriage. Because the truth is that you don't sign the papers, but you consider yourself married, and you don't
Yes.
sleep with many people, and you understand, you
Exactly.
operate as a unit, etc. But it is, I think, like baptism, where you are signaling
Ah.
to the world that so and so, and then it also helps you when we talk about that structural commitment and the ethical commitment and so on in your own as the participant in it. So I just won't wake up tomorrow and say, I can't bother with this no more. I got me go about my business. Right, because like there's a lot of webbing. It's tightly webbed, and it becomes a little bit more complicated for me, and so I'm more incentivized
Yeah.
to figure out how this can be solved as
Yeah.
against just packing up and going. And I think maybe that is a
Yeah,
little part.
and to Caroline, you and I would have talked about it to say for a long time in my mind, I'm saying, do I need to go to a church with a pastor to be married?
Yeah.
Because Lek and I would have sat together almost prayerfully saying, I'm committed to you and you are committed to me. This is before we got married. And basically pray together about our union. Who for say God not honor that? You
Exactly.
understand? Because around the world, people get married in different ways. It doesn't have to be the Western way.
Yeah.
And I don't want us to get sidetracked in terms of kind of pushing like a Christianity is what
Yes.
pushes marriage, because I speak from that because I'm that. But remember, marriage is something that all cultures and all religion
Yes.
embrace. And when you look at the African continent, all of Africa, all of Asia,
Yeah.
marriage is very
It's a big
important.
deal. Yes.
And adult children are pressured
Yes.
To get married, that's true.
pressured by their
Yeah.
parents to get married. And this
Yeah.
is seen in Christians, Muslims, Hindu, every religion you can think of.
Absolutely.
I think the most freedom is had in the Western world,
Yeah.
right? In the Eastern world, you have to get married. Are your parents are in your ears every day?
True.
Yes.
Tell
You
my mother that.
understand?
I should
You
say
Yeah.
I'm dead before I'm married. So switching gear again. What about the merits of the whole legality of marriage? Do you think that it's more important to get married for legal reasons, secure yourself, secure your children, even if the commitment is not as strong? Looking at it from a legal perspective and what this means for commitment.
I mean, it does make it easier, once it's on paper that we are married. It makes it easier for what we should be entitled to, like your spouse health insurance, your spouse pension, and not to say most places around the world now, not everywhere,
Yeah.
honors a common law
Right.
relationship. But when you get married, that whatever you are entitled to is basically instant. But in terms of a common law, you have to live together for a prolonged period before it is considered that you are now entitled to his
Right.
and he's entitled to yours. And when you're doing certain business transaction, you have to bring more evidence to show, say you are together, as
Yes.
opposed to a marriage certificate that just says yes. You
Mhm.
understand me?
Yeah.
You have to show how would you know that you were two are living together? Okay, see a lease agreement here where we signed 5 years ago. See some pictures here where we did take. It's a lot more work.
One bank
Mhm.
account here.
Yeah, it's a lot more work, and you find situations where, well, I've seen like a man is in his second relationship, have older children, he dies, and the strong committed relationship that he was in, common
Yep.
law, the woman end up out in a day cold, not getting nothing
Nothing for divorce.
because there's nothing on paper, and the pitney them from previous marriage take everything.
Yep.
You
I
understand?
mean, I totally agree with that, ladies. I think there are some practicalities about being married that
Yeah.
it make your life kind of just work a little bit easier if you're traveling, and it just works. Getting certain business done, it's not a lot of running around. As Sarah said. So yeah, so I think there are some sort of practical considerations as
Yeah.
well. In terms of whether or not you tie yourself to somebody in this way. Yeah.
I agree with that perspective. When you look at it from a legal perspective, it makes sense. It just
Mhm.
makes sense, for to be practical. Before common law was a thing, as Sarah mentioned, you have heard our stories about women who have been with men for years. And when they die, everything that the family just swoop in and take all the man possession.
Yeah.
They weren't married. And, back then, if you're not legally married, society don't recognize your union. And
Hmm.
I think it's probably about 2006, 7, where, spouse have any kind of legal ties to a man where in Jamaica is after 5 years, right? Before you're
Yeah.
considered common law.
Yeah.
In Canada is 1 year. So if you're not married and the man die, in between that,
Dog name is supper.
dog na me supper. So from that perspective, I guess getting married can be seen as a form of protection
Yes.
for the woman and their children. So, but on the issue of commitment, though, I would still argue that the legal portion of the marriage, it does not hold people accountable to their commitment. And we see that with the amount of divorces that we have seen and separation and infidelity. It not really set you up for success then. You just have to pray that the person that you marry is your person, and they won't go outside of the marriage. So looking at it
But
from a legal perspective, I get that. But when you look at it in terms of the real commitment and holding people accountable to the vows that they take, that is where we're still not doing well, especially when you look at it from a Caribbean, Jamaican perspective.
but getting married is not like, it's not a guarantee that you're gonna live happily ever after.
It should be.
No, it cannot be,
No.
Carolyn. It cannot be. It is right now. No, and this is in the case of if you're getting married for the right motives. So people get married for all kind of different things. But say argument's sake, I get married for the right motives, right? In this moment, I love you. In this moment, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. And for people who are in that mind space when they're getting married, most of them want to be with the person till them dead. But things happen, people change, betrayal come in, some people can't get over the betrayal, different things happen. Right, Carolyn? Because part of the marriage, is a celebration of your love, right? It's just like you don't have to get baptized to be saved. But every time I see somebody I get baptized, I cry because it's just I'm very ceremonial, right? My baby is covered by God, but I just love seeing a baby being dedicated in church. It's not a must. I do my degree, I'm a finish. Me not forgot the graduation for solidify or validate some of the go. But the idea of dressing up and walking across the stage and getting your certificate is nice. You understand? But it doesn't guarantee that, okay, now you're committed, you're gonna live happily ever after. No,
But
it
shouldn't it
doesn't.
though? Shouldn't it? That's my issue. Shouldn't getting married in front of God and man and your family and friends you vow to love each other forever. Shouldn't that guarantee that the marriage will work? If not, what's the big deal?
So is it the lack of the guarantee that makes you have your notion when you think about it, as in it's safer?
That is
Is
part
it
of
that
it
you think
too.
it's safer to stay unmarried?
No, I just think that is part of it too. People place this emphasis on marriage being this, sanctuary for people, and it's such a holy thing, and it's such a noble thing, and it's such a
And it
respected
is.
thing. But
And you
at the
have a
end of
lot of
the day,
people that have that. You have a lot of,
at the end of the
remember,
day,
you know,
it's not a
Caroline, let me
guarantee
tell
for
you
nothing.
something.
So why is it so committed?
Caroline, you have
Mm-hmm.
many of marriages that are beautiful. And when I say beautiful, it doesn't mean that teeth never knock. It never means that they never got through challenges. It's just that they were committed to wade it through and work it through.
Yeah.
You have to also
Uh,
remember some of the marriages that you see dissolved, right? I'm several coming to my mind now. Holy red flag was there. A lot of times we go in there with the best of intentions, but with the wrong motive. We just want for married, or we're just in love with the idea of being married.
which is why we're not for run down people for married and talk about why you're not married and why I'm not married you.
Exactly. I agree
You need
with
to leave
you.
it alone.
I agree with you. And we I think we should give each other enough grace to live our
Yeah.
lives the way we want.
Right.
And
respect
we talk about self-determination all the time. Allow people to live the life how they want, right? But a lot of them that you see dissolved is wrong motives, right? There were red flags and they went in it. And a very big one, which we have not touched on, a lot of people enter marriage seeking completion.
Yes.
And
Definitely.
when they enter the marriage seeking this person to complete them, and then they step with expectations that are not realistic. And then when the spouse don't meet those expectations, which they shouldn't have had to do in the first place, it creates a lot of animosity and challenges and hoopla. You're not being the man I wanted it to be, you're not being the woman I wanted it to
Yes.
be. Right? No human being can't complete you. Some people, and you have people say it. I have the career, I have the this. No, I need a man to complete me. No picnic can complete you. No man can complete you. It should be that you enter a committed relationship with somebody that can complement you well. Your wholeness should be all about you and your creator, nobody
True.
else. No one else can validate you. Your husband can only affirm that which the creator has already put in you, right? But for a lot of us, we go in marriage thinking that this Hollywood fantasy and the
Yeah.
romance fantasy is gonna ride in on a white horse. I'm gonna jump on the back of the horse and we're gonna live happily
We'll get right off
ever
into the sunset.
after.
We're going to live happily ever
Yes, and
after.
he's going to complete me. If you going in that relationship seeking completion, sister, oh,
I know. So
I had to learn that the hard way for another podcast.
cool. Based on your own personal experiences, what you've seen in your family as it relates to marriage and commitment, has that in any way impacted your decision to get married? I can think from my own experience, my mother and father, they got married when I was about three or four. My eldest sister got married pretty early, 21, 22, because she's a Christian, and that wasn't, the next step for her if she wanted to have sex.
No, don't. Yeah, the next step for her, she wanted to. I'm sure there was more to the story.
Oh my
She
God.
wanted to honor her
I
relationship
think
with
that is
God.
why she got, that's why Christians get married early, right? So let's put that out there.
Not
Christians
all.
get
Some
married,
of them really in love.
Sarah,
No,
when you say married
no,
at
no,
20
no,
and
no.
21,
No,
usually
not
because
true.
they want. All right, so that is part of it too.
But
Because
you have to remember, Carlin, not to cut you. You have a lot.
Mhm.
All right. You could be in love, right? And you feel that natural thing, you want to have sex, and you say, let's not waste time. We're already in love. Let's get married, which is different
Exactly.
than,
But
which is, no.
no,
It's very different.
you don't
Follow
marry.
me.
That is a big part of it.
No,
You-
it's, no,
you-
make my pint.
Right, make your
It is,
point.
it's very different than if it's just lost in the
You
relationship.
agree with me, or you agree with Sarah?
I'm somewhere in between. No,
As always.
let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. I think no, honestly, and I think very often people confuse the lust for the love.
Exactly.
Right.
And so it becomes a little problematic. So you don't give yourself enough time to kind of figure out what this is, if you can really stand a
Yes.
person. Yeah? And
Because
so
really,
you're
really,
getting to scale
mhm,
that first hurdle to say, okay, yes, you're feeling some type of way about the person, but then after you spend a little bit more time with them and so on, now you realize that, okay,
When the love
this
is
is
gone.
fading.
so I do not necessarily have, negative experiences with marriage. I think it works if, again, you're marrying for the right reason and all of that. But this is not true for most people. Their experiences has not been good. So based on that, I was asking the questions, how do you view marriage based on, your worldview, your lived experiences, and what you have seen in your family?
Mm, in what way? I mean, in terms of if we still think it's a good institution?
Yes.
Hmm. I think it's a great institution. And I've been witness to a lot of great marriages, right?
Okay.
Um, I have had mostly wonderful experiences in my own, and there have
Right.
been there have been hills and valleys, but when it's good, it's really good. And I think, people change. Some of the marriages you see don't work is because people change, or them never enter it with the right motives, or the red flags were there and they shouldn't have, and then go anyway. But generally speaking, I think it's one of the best institutions God ever created.
Hmm.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
Teacher!
No. I've been married. What is it now? 13 years,
Nice.
yeah, and I do believe in the institution of marriage. But I think you ladies have said it before that one, I think I have found my person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two, my husband and we didn't have kind of um peculiar expectations about marriage. In other words, we knew that the logistics of life was going to be easier because we have the same name, and we already, but we had, you know what I mean. Yeah, you get a little status from it when you're traveling. Is ease of travel, your banking arrangement, ease of, you know. But we had also already understood and decided that we had found our persons,
Okay.
right? So we love each other. So whether or not we got married was not going to affect that. So we already had that as kind of, that was our resting place. That was our baseline. So yeah, I definitely believe it. I think that if you get married and you have in fact found your person, you will have absolutely no regrets. I mean, life is good with company.
Yeah.
There was a film, and I think I've quoted this to Sarah before, with, I think it's Susan Sarandon and Jennifer Lopez and what's his
Okay.
name, Richard Gere. And Susan Sarandon had thought that her husband was cheating on her, but really it turned out he was just doing some dance lessons with the
Yes,
lovely,
yes.
Oh
what's her
yes,
name,
yes,
right? And
yes,
I
yes.
remember the conversation she had in the bar with the investigator she had hired to, figure out what was going on with her husband. And the man said to her, well, if you believe he's cheating, why are you doing all of this? And she said to him, because it's great to have somebody witness your life.
Mm.
And when you have a husband or you have a wife,
Yes.
quite honestly, you have somebody who witnessed your life, somebody who
Oh,
knows
I
you
like
a little
that.
bit better than
I
anybody
actually
else.
like that.
Yeah, I like that.
It really does work. So I would highly recommend it, but I will also agree that perhaps it isn't for everybody. Um,
Yeah,
and
and
when
it's
you do get,
okay.
and that is perfectly fine. This is not even a judgment, and it's not us being sussy who are married and say,
Yeah.
oh, everybody shouldn't get married. If you want to get married, go out and do it. But I think the truth is,
Yes.
in the same way that having children is not necessarily for everybody.
Yes.
People
Exactly.
like me and Sarah have one, and one biological child in my own case, and I have
Yeah.
a stepson, so I have two. But I wouldn't want another child. Like
Okay.
I don't want, you know what I mean? So yeah, that is what I would say. About that parenting. I
Interesting.
recommend
I
it,
like
but it's
that.
not for
I
everybody.
like that, teacher. But So this is a final discussion question that we will have before we wrap up, right? So as two of my very married friends, how would you advise someone, a young person or anyone who's thinking about getting married, and what that means in terms of commitment and understanding that marriage is not necessarily the same thing as commitment? What advice would you have for them, or how would you caution them to, look at marriage from that perspective?
Um, so as I said, first of all, I would not try to say to anybody, don't get married.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, however, um, I would I would suggest or recommend that you first take a little time with yourself and figure out what it is that you really want.
So don't
I
get
mean,
married at 21.
yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to, to judge it or prejudge it, but I think 21, I mean, if I recall when I was 21, I don't think I was ready to get married at 21.
Mm.
That is not to say that if you get married at 21, it cannot work, right? Because if you check some people who've been married 60, 70 years, they got married at that kind of an age.
Mm.
So it's not to say that if you get married at 21, it will not work. But I think at the point of which you sort of seriously begin to contemplate marriage, whatever the age is, you do need to take a little time to do a bit of self-examination and say, well, am I comfortable with who I am? Am I really ready to get married? What does marriage really mean to me? Am I going in it to get some money, as Sarah would have said earlier, and you both? Is it that I'm trying
Mhm.
to find somebody to complete me? In other words, do I have mommy and daddy issues? Have I been hurt in the past, and therefore, it is somehow motivating me to get with this person? Do I honestly love the person that I'm thinking of getting married to? Does that person love me? Right? I think sometimes people get themselves locked up in a kind of fantasy land about how they feel about the person and how they feel the person feel about them without really kind of honestly
Yes.
interrogating it. And so I think you need to take the time to do that. Ask yourself the questions and then have a conversation or several conversations with the person, so that you both from Jump Street are kind of understanding what it is that you're getting into and what your particular motivations are. And then certainly underpinning all of that is the need to kind of be honest with yourself, honest with the person. I myself never did marriage counseling. Maybe I like to
Oh.
credit the fact that my husband and I were both communicators, and so we kind of figured it out. But I would recommend counseling for persons who
Mm.
may, have a little difficulty with that. And then I think finally, Carolyn, I would say recognize. So the first part is to take the time with yourself, figure out if you know who you are, honestly. Then ask yourself the questions, a set of questions I would have said to you. And then finally, be prepared to make room for the other person to grow and to change. Now, people very often say that people don't change. Whereas the core personality may not change, I'm telling you, people's interests change, people's, desires. So you might be at the start of the marriage and the person will seem like them too motivated by money, but two bouts of illness in and some other tragedies, and all of a
Mm.
sudden becomes a thing. And
Mm.
so people then make decisions about where we're going to live and what kind of job do I therefore need to do, and do I need to upskill myself and so on. And that means that you're going to have to change and adjust, and very often I feel that this is when marriages break down, when somehow you don't find it in yourself to make the adjustment to give the other person a little bit of room to be different from who they were at the start of the process. So I would challenge people who are contemplating marriage to say, well, look here, are you prepared
Yeah.
to accommodate somebody being a little bit or a lot different from who they are
From.
now in
Mm.
order to make it work? And
Right.
yeah, that would kind of be like my little 2 cents to
Yeah.
them.
I love all of it. Can I just say ditto?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, I would highlight a lot of what P said. I won't repeat it. Understanding and having a strong sense of self, and entering a committed relationship, not seeking someone to complete you, is very important, because you're going to be grossly disappointed when they're not able to meet the
Yeah.
expectations that you enter the marriage with. I believe that you should not be pressured into marriage, either because of societal expectations or your church pressure you, or all your friend them get married is not a reason for you to get married, right? Um, Even when you both are in love and you have the best of intentions and you're both fully committed, it can still be very hard, right?
Mhm.
Um, so when you're gonna have the added issues of maybe we weren't supposed to,
Right.
that makes it worse, right? So don't come to it unless you're like really, really sure, and temper your expectations, and
Yeah.
it won't always be butterflies.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, we don't have the time for me to get into the details
Yes.
as to, I read in a book, one of the best books I ever read, in terms of what happens. It was really dissecting love. When people say I'm in love, what is love?
Mm-hmm.
And what is being in love? And it talk about these chemicals that your body release when you meet somebody and you're attracted to them, which for no couple it lasts forever, right? So you're gonna have
Mhm.
ebbs and flows. And you're gonna have to really work hard sometimes to keep the fire burning, because you can end up in ruts, especially when you start having kids. And
Yeah.
some people want to pick up and run when the butterfly is gone. Where it means you are marrying for lust. When you marry for
Yeah.
lust, things come in, illness come in. You
Yeah.
understand? Where one of you or both of you battling for a long time, and there's no lust in that period. You
Mhm.
Right.
understand? So it's deeper than that. Oh, he makes me feel so good, and the
He gives me
movie fairy
butterflies.
tales. Yeah, that's all good, we're all
Yeah.
relishing that, and it's nice, and the orgasm nice, and all of that is nice. But no, that is it's a lot more to the game.
It is. It
That
is.
and for me, once you're sold on the fact that you are ready in that
Mm-hmm.
moment, and you really believe at any age, um,
Yes.
that cause you can wait till 55 and you still don't get the maturity that's needed for
Of
marriage.
course.
True.
Of
And
course.
you have some very
And I
mature
dare say it's
people.
harder then because we're all set in our ways
Set
after
in your
Yes.
ways,
Yes.
set in
Yes.
your ways, right? But I do believe though that you have to leave room. Not to say you're going there expecting it to doom, but not everything may pan out the way you expected. And
Mhm.
the fear of not knowing how it will go is not a reason not to get married.
True.
Because some people shy away from marriage because they're scared of what might happen, and it might not work, or might end up get divorced, and da, 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 da. That should not stop you from getting married. I think you just jump in, arms wide open, and know, say if things don't work, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It's just part of life, and you just bounce and come again.
Me like,
You
oh, no,
know?
no, you not say you're not forget married still. You
No,
still
no,
No,
married
Peter said
we said
it.
successfully,
that. Yeah, man.
Peter
Yeah.
said it,
right?
and I said it earlier. And
Never
I
hear
and
that
I
part there.
no, okay, let me say it now. You
Yeah.
don't have to get married. Right? Saying is, I believe in a person's right to self-determination.
Yes.
There are certain topics that neither side A or B will ever convince the other side of.
Right.
And you just have to appropriate your beliefs in how you live your life, your own
Fair enough.
life,
Fair enough.
and not project it onto other people. So for me, from the worldview I stand on, I believe in the institution of marriage, but I respect another woman saying, I don't want to get
Okay, I like
married, or
that.
I
Okay.
don't want to have kids. It should be okay. And I will give that woman enough grace to live her life the way she wants.
So we leave it at that for you. You respect it, you want it, and it's something that's important to you, but you're okay if somebody doesn't want it.
I still want
Now,
you to get married though.
for my for me, you know, my disclaimer is usually that I am no expert on what makes a relationship work. So I am not usually the best person to ask for advice about relationship. Everyone's need is different. And all of what you guys have said are good advice and all of that. And those are things that people need to look at when they're thinking about getting into a committed relationship or getting married. And as I've been saying throughout the podcast, you do not need to be married to have a committed relationship, irrespective of what society tells us. So for me, the commitment part is the biggest deciding factor, and that is with or without the marriage ceremony. So, again, I don't think you need a ring or somebody's name to signify that you're in a committed relationship. And we talk about all of that. I do, however, believe that, when you're in a relationship, though, you have to ask for what you want. And I know you alluded to it earlier, Sarah, that people will say, me don't want married, but deep down they do. Right? And because it's not happening, they say that. But for me, once you're honest with yourself, once you know who you are and what you want from a relationship, if you're not getting it, then of course that person is not your person. Because you should be on the same page. And if you want to get married and your partner don't want to take that step with you, then you need to rethink what is happening.
Yeah, we never talk about that,
Absolutely.
and that's a big one,
Yeah, definitely.
Because sometimes you can be in a very committed relationship, both committed, and one want married and one
And
don't.
one don't want married, exactly.
And it's not like the one who don't want married, not committed.
But it's just probably sometimes, again, different worldviews. You don't think that you need it and the other person need it because of their worldview. So how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, the one they're hot. The one they're hot.
Yeah. Okay, so there you have it, folks. Our views on marriage and commitment. I hope you enjoyed our podcast. But before we go, I want to leave you with this. Marriage is a sacred commitment, as we had said, throughout this podcast. And it should not be entered into lightly. If marriage is the way you show your commitment, by all means, go for it. Have the wedding dress and the big wedding and anything or any way you envision your wedding. You should get that if, that's the way you profess your love. At the same, on another end, if marriage is not for you and you do not think that you have to get married, of course, we have to respect each other, and whatever your views, we have to make sure that, we are not pushing who we are or who we think another person should be, and pushing them in a way that, you would want to live your life and not necessarily how someone else wants to live their life. So until next time, we say
bye.
Bye.